He walked into that interview with hope, dressed sharp, resume in hand, and a dream to finally break through. But within minutes, they made it clear. They weren't looking for someone like him. The smirk, the dismissive tone, the insult that burned deep. It wasn't just rejection, it was humiliation. That day, Michael left with nothing but anger and a promise to himself. 10 years later, he returned. Not for a job, but to buy the very company that once told him he didn't belong. Michael had always believed that hard work could break any barrier. He grew up in a small neighborhood where ambition was often crushed by circumstance, but he refused to let that define him. His parents worked long hours, his mother at a diner, his father at a mechanic shop, and from them, Michael learned what resilience looked like. He studied late, worked part-time jobs, and graduated near the top of his class with a degree in business. By his mid-20s, he was full of quiet determination. Not flashy, not loud, just focused. He wanted one thing: a fair chance. When a prestigious firm in the city opened a position that matched his dream job, he saw it as his opportunity to finally prove himself. He spent days preparing, tailoring his resume, rehearsing questions, even borrowing a suit from a friend just to look the part. That morning, he stood in front of the mirror, straightened his tie, and told himself, "This is it, the office building." Looked like success. Glass walls, polished floors, a place where dreams were either made or crushed. As he entered, the receptionist's smile didn't reach her eyes. The interviewer's glance lingered a moment too long, the kind of look that weighed and judged before a single word was spoken. Still, Michael kept his composure. He answered every question with confidence, backed by facts and experience. But behind the polite nods and forced smiles, something else lingered. A quiet disbelief that he could belong there. When he left that day, he didn't yet realize that the rejection waiting for him wasn't about his qualifications. It was about the color of his skin, and that single moment of humiliation would ignite a fire that would take him 10 years and everything he had to answer. The rejection email came 2 days later. A short, polite note that said they'd gone in a different direction. Michael stared at it for a long time, knowing exactly what it meant, but unable to prove it. Still, the words burned. He remembered the way the interviewer had smirked at his resume, the tone that shifted when he spoke about his background, and the patronizing comment, "You've done well for where you're from." It wasn't just a rejection. It was a reminder of how invisible he was in rooms like that. For a while, Michael spiraled. He questioned himself, his choices, even his worth. But self-doubt turned into something else: determination. If they wouldn't give him a seat at their table, he'd build one of his own. He took a job at a small logistics startup, working long hours in a warehouse by day and studying business management at night. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a start. He watched, listened, learned how operations worked, how systems broke, and how people built them again. He absorbed everything like a sponge. Years passed. Promotions came slowly. Not because he wasn't capable, but because of the same quiet bias that followed him everywhere. Being overlooked, talked over, and having his ideas borrowed by others who got the credit. Still, Michael stayed focused. Every obstacle became fuel. Every slight became strategy. By his early 30s, he'd saved enough to take a risk. With a few trusted colleagues, he started his own small logistics company. They worked out of a cramped office space with old computers and a second-hand delivery van. It was nothing compared to the firm that once rejected him, but Michael treated it like a mission. At first, they struggled. Clients were hard to win, funding was harder, and the competition was brutal. But what Michael had was persistence and memory. He remembered how it felt to be dismissed. He vowed to build a place where no one would feel that again. Slowly, his company began to grow. One satisfied client turned into 5. 5 became 20. Within a few years, his business had expanded across multiple cities. His face started appearing in local business magazines, recognized as a self-made entrepreneur who rose from the bottom. And then, one morning, as he scanned through an industry report, his eyes stopped on a familiar name. The company that once rejected him. They were struggling. Their profits had dropped. Their leadership was fractured. He couldn't help but smirk. Life had come full circle, and fate was knocking at the door. A few weeks later, his assistant walked into his office holding a file. "Sir, the board from that firm reached out," she said. "They're looking for investors." Michael sat back in his chair, staring at the company logo on the folder, the same one that used to haunt him. The memories flooded back. The smirk, the insult, the sting of being told he wasn't good enough. This was his moment, the one he had built in silence, through years of hard work and resilience. He didn't say much. He just nodded. "Set up a meeting," he said quietly. And just like that, the story that began with rejection was about to meet its turning point, one that would prove how far a man can rise when he's underestimated. The elevator doors opened with the same sound he remembered all those years ago. That cold, metallic chime that once marked the end of his dream. Michael stepped out, dressed in a tailored suit that carried quiet power. Not loud, not boastful, but undeniable. He looked around the lobby. The same marble floors, the same silver company logo glinting under bright lights. Everything was familiar, yet nothing felt the same. Employees glanced up as he walked past, sensing the presence of someone important, not realizing that this was the man they had once turned away. In the boardroom, the air was thick with desperation. The executives looked tired, cornered by years of decline. Their new investor, the man who could save them, was the same one they had once humiliated. Michael sat down at the head of the table. The same interviewer who had insulted him years ago sat across from him. Older now, his confidence replaced with unease. Recognition flickered in his eyes. Disbelief, then shame. Michael let the silence hang. It was the same silence he had endured years ago, only this time he controlled it. He opened the folder, glanced through the papers, and spoke calmly. "Let's begin." The meeting proceeded like business, but every word carried a deeper weight. When the final papers were signed, ownership officially transferred to him. The company that once denied him now belonged to him. As the room emptied, the old interviewer lingered. His voice cracked as he said, "I didn't realize back then." Michael stood, meeting his eyes. "You didn't need to," he said. "You just needed to respect me." He walked out of that building without looking back, the same doors opening for him that once closed in his face. But this time, he wasn't just walking through them. He was rewriting what they stood for. And for the first time in a decade, he smiled. Not out of revenge, but because he had proven that dignity doesn't need permission. It just needs persistence. The news spread quickly. The small-town kid, who had once been rejected, was now the new owner of the company that dismissed him. Some called it poetic justice, others called it karma. But for Michael, it wasn't about revenge. It was about recognition, proving that worth isn't determined by the color of your skin or the prejudices of those sitting across the table. In his first act as owner, he didn't fire anyone. Instead, he changed something far more powerful: the system itself. The hiring process was rebuilt from the ground up, focused on fairness, representation, and real opportunity. He created mentorship programs for underrepresented young professionals, offering the chances he was once denied. Because Michael knew the truth. What had happened to him wasn't rare. It was a reflection of how many doors stay closed for people who don't fit someone else's definition of professional. He wanted to break that cycle. As the years passed, the company became a model for inclusion and transformation. People who once felt invisible now had a place to grow. And whenever someone new walked into that office nervous and uncertain, Michael made sure they were met with respect, not judgment. Sometimes he would pass by that same interview room where it all began. He'd pause, remembering the man who once walked out of there feeling small. Then he'd smile, because that man hadn't been defeated. He'd just been redirected. In the end, Michael's story wasn't about revenge. It was about redemption, resilience, and rewriting what success looks like for those who've been underestimated their whole lives. And as his story spread, it left one question echoing everywhere. How many more brilliant minds are being dismissed today simply because of who they are? Don't miss more powerful real-life stories. Hit subscribe now.